When I woke up, I was shocked to find myself lying in the arms of a school beauty's mom. The sight of this graceful woman made me swallow nervously. At that moment, she also woke up, gently kissed my cheek, and then started changing clothes right in front of me. Her smooth, fair back came into view, and my face turned red. I quickly covered my eyes and rushed into the bathroom. After splashing my face with cold water, I managed to calm down a bit. All of this started 3 days ago, on a rainy night. That was when I had just been reborn and realized I had become a homeless detective with an awakened succubus-like charm. Every time I used my charm ability, people would develop uncontrollable feelings for me. So, when Vivian passed by, she stopped and walked up to me. Seeing me drenched in the rain, she crouched down and gently asked, "Why aren't you going home with it raining so hard?" "I don't have a home." I looked at this unfamiliar world, my tone turning somber. "Did you run away from home?" Vivian asked. "No." I lowered my head, unsure how to explain. What I didn't notice was how her gaze toward me had subtly changed. "How about you come home with me, little Bubba?" she offered. "Thank you, but I'll be fine. I can find somewhere to stay." I politely declined her offer, but unexpectedly, she stepped forward and grabbed my wrist. Because of the size difference, she easily pulled me into her arms. My soaked clothes clung to her dress, but she didn't seem to mind. Instead, she just carried me towards her car nearby. The car stopped in front of a luxurious mansion. She lifted me out of the passenger seat and carried me inside in a princess carry. Throughout the whole process, I could only feel the soft embrace of her arms, unable to resist. "My house is huge. There's more than enough space for you," the elegant woman said as she opened the door, holding my rain-soaked body and walking in. "Vivian, could you maybe put me down now?" I asked cautiously, but instead of loosening her grip, she held me even tighter, her body leaning closer to mine. Feeling a subtle pressure coming from her, I quickly corrected myself. "Vivian, sis?" "Good boy, Jeff. That's better," she said with a smile tugging at the corner of her lips, then reluctantly set me down. While we were in the car, I learned about her. Vivian was an executive at some design company, originally out for work, but she had run into me by chance. According to her, she took an immediate liking to me. Whether that liking was because she was empathetic or for some other reason, I wasn't sure. After all, you often hear in the news that the lives of rich people are complicated. I just hoped Vivian didn't have any strange intentions. "Jeff, let's get you cleaned up first," she said, grabbing my hand and leading me to the bathroom. Standing at the bathroom door, I was about to undress when I noticed Vivian hadn't left. "Vivian, why are you still here?" "I need a shower too. Can't you see my dress is all wet?" she replied, tugging at her soaked hem, revealing the black lace lingerie underneath. The moment I saw that, my face flushed bright red. "There's a difference between men and women," I stammered awkwardly. "But you're so cute. I was thinking we could shower together," she teased with a playful smile, filling the bathroom with an overwhelming aura of a mature woman. "Ha, just kidding," she chuckled, covering her mouth before continuing. "I don't have any men's clothes at home, so I'll have to give you a set of pajamas for now." With that, she turned and left the bathroom. As soon as she was gone, I hurried up and finished my shower quickly. After I was done, I opened the door and grabbed the clothes she had prepared for me. But as I put on the pink pajamas with little bears on them, I couldn't help but feel a bit strange wearing them. "Jeff, are you done yet?" Vivian's voice came from outside the door. "Just a second, Vivian. I'm almost done," I replied quickly. But right after I spoke, the doorknob turned, and there she was, standing right in front of me. "You're clearly finished, so why are you acting so immature, Jeff?" she said, a hint of playfulness mixed with mock frustration in her voice. For an adult, this kind of behavior was undeniably seductive, and I was no exception. I immediately lowered my head, too nervous to meet her gaze. "Feeling guilty, huh? Does that mean you're ready to face your punishment?" She moved closer, her tone playful, almost teasing. "Vivian, I'm sorry," I stuttered, apologizing in a panic. "You little rascal, close your eyes," she whispered softly, her warm breath brushing against my ear, making me feel a bit hot. Wanting to end the awkwardness as soon as possible, I obediently shut my eyes. "Good boy," she giggled, and then I heard a soft, gentle sound. "Vivian," I tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come out. There was this strange feeling in my chest. We had just met, so why did it feel like we were already so close? "Jeff, I'm quite pleased. Now go on, it's my turn to shower," she said with a smile, waving her hand. I wanted to ask, in such a big mansion, Was there really no other bathroom? But seeing her in such a good mood, I had a feeling asking might lead to even more trouble. Vivian, should I take my dirty clothes out with me? No need. Just leave them here. I'll wash them for you later, she said, pointing to the washing machine nearby, clearly not intending for me to take them. All right. I reluctantly left the bathroom and made my way to the living room, sitting quietly on the couch to wait. Suddenly, the front door swung open, and a girl in a JK uniform walked in. Who are you? And why are you in my house? She asked, her sharp gaze locking onto me, her voice full of suspicion. Seeing her pull out her phone, likely ready to call the police, I quickly raised my voice, panicking. Wait, I'm not a thief. Vivian picked me up off the street. My heart was racing. If the police got involved, my secret identity would be exposed. Vivian, you know my mom? She asked, her tone softening slightly, though still puzzled. I nodded quickly. All right then, come with me. She strode confidently with her long legs wrapped in white stockings and led me to sit on the couch. So, tell me, how do you know my mom? She said, giving me a once-over as she studied me carefully. I secretly observed her while quietly activating my ability, scanning her tags. Calm and sharp-tongued, can't resist cute animals. Under her watchful gaze, I slowly began recounting everything that had happened. After listening to my story, Sophia furrowed her brows slightly, scrutinizing me closely, but remaining silent. If you still don't believe me, you can wait for your mom to come out of the shower and explain, I added cautiously. No need. If my mom's involved, then it's fine, she replied coolly. But you need to explain why you're dressed like that. At first, I thought you were some kind of cross-dressing pervert. Wow, I was definitely feeling the sting of her sharp tone. My clothes were soaked from the rain, so Vivian gave me these to wear, I explained. Hearing her mom's name again, Sophia suddenly leaned in closer, a strange glint flashing in her eyes. What are you doing? I instinctively leaned back, but she ignored my discomfort, sniffing around me like a curious animal. Yeah, that's it. Her eyes shimmered with a peculiar light. She had sensed something about me earlier, something that seemed to draw her in, and now she appeared to have confirmed her suspicions. I had no idea what was going through her mind, but at that moment, all I wanted was to put some distance between us. What do you mean? That's it, I asked, confused. Before I could process what was happening, my foot slipped and I fell back onto the couch. Suddenly, two soft hands pressed against either side of my head, and Sophia sat on my chest, looking down at me from above. Whose pajamas are you wearing? Sophia asked, her voice calm but intense. I don't know, I stammered. She leaned in even closer, smirking, feeling guilty. Aren't you? No, not at all. I'm just a little embarrassed, I stammered, feeling like the brief conversation was dragging on for an eternity. Do you want me to let you go? Sophia leaned in even closer. Compared to her mother's voluptuous figure, she was completely flat, but that didn't make the situation any less intense. Yes, I do, I thought to myself, hoping she'd just get off me already. Then call me sister, and I'll let you go, she teased, her tone dripping with amusement. This doesn't feel right. I hesitated. I'd already called her mother sister, and now she wanted me to call her the same? It felt way too confusing. Hurry up, call me. My mom and I don't mind, she pressed on, not giving me any chance to resist. She was just as overbearing as her mother. Sophia, sister. I finally gave in, feeling utterly helpless. As soon as I said it, a smirk tugged at Sophia's lips. It was the first time I had seen her smile since she walked into the room. What are you two doing? Vivian asked as she stepped out of the bathroom, her tone laced with displeasure upon seeing her daughter in such an intimate position with me. Sophia simply glanced up, gave a casual greeting, and continued to pin me down, completely unbothered by her mother's appearance. Sophia, get up. You're making Jeff uncomfortable, Vivian said with a slight frown. Mother, are you telling me to let go of Jeff? Do you really think I'd scare him? Sophia responded dismissively. The conversation between the mother and daughter left me, the one trapped underneath, completely baffled. Fine, Sophia finally sighed, turning her head away, her eyes returning to their usual calm. Sophia, why are you so interested in Jeff? Vivian asked, clearly puzzled. As her mother, Vivian knew her daughter's character well. Sophia was usually aloof, rarely interacting with others, and especially uninterested in men. It was unlike her to behave this way, especially towards someone like Jeff. Sophia's gaze lingered on the pajamas I was wearing as she replied, Mother, don't you find it amusing? You gave my pajamas to Bubba. It's only temporary. I'll buy him new clothes tomorrow, Vivian explained. I'm just temporarily curious too. There's something about the scent on him that draws me in, Sophia added, her tone casual but focused. Trying to defuse the tension, I quickly interjected. Really, there's no need for all this. I'll leave in the morning, so I won't cause any trouble. No! Both of them rejected the idea in unison before I could even finish my sentence. Why leave? Are you rejecting us, your sisters? They both asked, giving me no chance to explain. It's getting late. Let's have dinner first. Tomorrow, I'll help you sort out your identity issue, Vivian said, as if it were already decided. After dinner, I collapsed onto the large bed in the guest room on the first floor. Upstairs were their bedrooms, along with some extra rooms. Vivian had insisted I stay in one of those rooms, but in the end, I opted to stay on the first floor. Staring at the unfamiliar ceiling, I couldn't help but think that today felt like a dream. Soon, a wave of exhaustion swept over me, and before I even had a chance to turn off the lights, I had fallen into a deep sleep. This tale is so cute, just like a puppy's. At some point, a clear voice pierced through my hazy sleep, and I had this odd sensation, like something was touching my lower half. I tried to move, but no matter how hard I struggled, I couldn't fully wake up. The touching went on for a while, until I eventually lost track of when it stopped. Just when I thought the nightmare had ended, something grabbed onto my lower body again. At first, I thought I was dreaming, but when I woke up and saw my pants halfway off, I realized that what had happened last night might not have been a dream after all. I scratched my head in frustration. I made a mental note to always lock the door from now on. A boy needs to protect himself when staying at someone else's place. After washing up, I headed to the living room and found Sophia there, alone. Good morning, Sophia. I greeted her, preparing to sit across from her. But before I could take a step, she grabbed my wrist. Pulling me toward the seat next to her, she pointed and said, "Sit here." All right, I sighed, realizing from our recent interactions that her words weren't requests. They were orders that I had no choice but to follow. Bubba, come on, open your mouth. Sophia held up a piece of breakfast and brought it close to me. Sophia, what are you doing? Are you trying to feed me? I asked, almost in disbelief. Come on, open your mouth, she repeated, staring at the food hovering near my lips. I knew she wouldn't stop until I complied. So I opened my mouth, expecting the sausage to be placed inside. But instead, it lightly grazed my lips without entering. Confused, I looked up at her. Sophia raised her hand slightly, signaling for me to lift my head higher. Feeling a little exasperated, I wondered if she was just playing with me. I tilted my head up again, and this time she finally didn't hold back. As I thought, Bubba is as cute as a little puppy, she said, her eyes sparkling with amusement. Seeing her gaze, I quickly swallowed the food and said, Sophia, I'm done eating. I tried to leave my seat, but before I could take a step, Sophia blocked my path. Bubba, where are you going? I was thinking of going back to my room. I knew that with the effect I had on her, staying longer was only going to make things more complicated. Take this outfit back to your room and change into it. Sophia handed me a finely tailored suit. After you change, we're heading out together. We drove to the university, and as we arrived, Sophia turned to me, seated in the passenger seat, and said, Bubba, when we get out, stay close to me, and no matter what the other girls say, don't pay attention to them, especially the pretty ones. Sophia knew all too well the irresistible allure my charm had on girls. Sure enough, the moment I stepped out of the car and walked past the female students, my succubus-like attractiveness immediately drew their attention. Their eyes were glued to me, as if enchanted by my presence. Who's this handsome little guy? Hey, can this give you a little touch? How about it? Some girls teased as we passed by. If it weren't for Sophia walking protectively beside me, I might have already been overwhelmed by the group of female students. Let's walk faster, Sophia said, gripping my hand tightly as she led me quickly toward a nearby building. According to her, we were heading out to meet one of her friends. When we entered the art studio, I followed Sophia's gaze and saw a beautiful girl with twin pigtails quietly painting in a corner. Her expression was calm, almost indifferent, with no visible emotion. She was so focused on her artwork that it seemed like nothing around her could distract her. As we approached, I couldn't help but admire her incredible skill when I caught a glimpse of her work on the easel. Beata, are you done? Sophia asked softly. The girl slowly turned around, her delicate face still void of expression. her voice flat and emotionless. "If I'm done, should I pack up and get ready to leave?" Sophia smiled and replied, "We're going shopping for supplies, remember?" "Oh, I forgot," Beata responded, her tone making it clear that she hadn't been paying much attention. Their conversation felt like they weren't quite on the same page. Just then, Beata suddenly focused her gaze intently on me. Noticing this, Sophia subtly stepped in front of me, as if to shield me from Beata's intense stare. She explained, "This is my friend. Beata is an exchange student. She's unfamiliar with a lot of things, so don't be alarmed if she acts a bit strangely." I couldn't help but grow curious about Beata's personality, so I quietly activated my ability to check her tags. Airhead dependent, loves cute animals. Seeing those tags, I finally understood why Beata had that air of confusion around her. The dependent tag likely meant she needed someone to take care of her, and the loves cute animals part gave me a bad feeling. Before I could think about it more, Beata suddenly spoke up. "Sophia, who is he?" "This is Jeff, my bubba," Sophia replied. I stepped forward, figuring that since she was Sophia's friend, calling her sister wouldn't be an issue. "Hello, Beata." "Jeff, I like you," Beata said out of nowhere. I froze, completely caught off guard. Even Sophia's expression shifted to one of complexity. Her friend had just confessed to the person she considered her bubba. It was the first time Sophia had seen Beata so direct. While both of us stood there in shock, Beata calmly turned back to her easel and began drawing rapidly. In no time, an image started to form on the paper. It was a boy who looked strikingly like me, being hugged tightly by a girl. As I watched her draw, the more I stared at the boy, the more I realized he looked exactly like me. After finishing the sketch, Beata carefully picked it up and handed it to me. Faced with the drawing, I immediately felt trapped. There was no way I could accept it, especially with Sophia standing right next to me. This was a no-win situation. "Why are you giving me this?" I asked hesitantly. "It's a gift for you. In manga, they always do this," Beata replied earnestly. "Manga?" I was struggling to keep up with her train of thought. One moment we were talking about gifts, and the next she was talking about manga. "Yeah, in manga, when the main characters meet, they always give each other gifts," Beata explained, tilting her head as if this made perfect sense. Sophia quickly interrupted. "Jeff, don't overthink it. She's just been influenced by reading too many manga. Despite her amazing talent in painting, she's always dreaming about becoming a manga artist." After saying that, she reached out and took the drawing from Beata. "Since it's a gift for my bubba, I'll keep it safe for him," Sophia said without hesitation, tucking the drawing away in her arms, clearly not intending to hand it over to me. Beata simply nodded in agreement, as if this outcome perfectly fit her understanding of how things should go. As we left the art studio, Beata became quiet again, trailing behind us like a timid little hamster. Sophia tried to coax her friend to walk beside us, but Beata shook her head, refusing to come closer. A trace of regret crossed Sophia's mind. She realized she had underestimated the effect I had on other girls. Maybe bringing me along wasn't the best idea. When we reached the parking spot, Sophia opened the car door, buckled herself in, and said to Beata, "Beata, sit in the front." Her reasoning was simple. If I sat in the back alone, there'd be no chance of me being surrounded by other girls. However, Beata flatly refused. "No." Sophia's frustration visibly spiked. "Beata, just listen," Sophia insisted. She knew all too well that her friend's real intention for wanting to sit in the back was because of me. "The back is fine," Beata repeated, her gaze locked onto me with an intensity that made me uneasy. "Sophia, I'll sit in the front." "I'm not comfortable sitting in the back with Beata," I said, feeling increasingly anxious under Beata's unwavering stare. The front seat seemed like the much safer option at this point. Hearing my suggestion to sit in the front, Sophia nodded approvingly, clearly satisfied with my sense of boundaries. I took my place in the passenger seat, but Beata's gaze shifted, as if she had just lost her favorite pet. Sophia, trying to be considerate of me, drove at a slower pace. However, the slower speed gave Beata, sitting in the back, an opportunity. She quietly shifted to sit right behind me, then leaned forward, her pale arms reaching over the seat to tightly wrap around mine. I tried to pull away, but her grip was like iron, refusing to let go. The commotion caught Sophia's attention. She immediately turned, her face darkening with cold fury. "Beata, sit properly." Her voice dropped the temperature in the car by several degrees. Beata, clearly frightened, quickly withdrew her arms and stopped bothering me, for now. When we arrived at a large shopping mall, Sophia wasted no time positioning herself protectively between me and Beata, guiding me behind her and pulling Beata to the other side. "Beata, you stay over there," she ordered sternly. "No," Beata replied, lifting her head defiantly. "Norge, ili chef." "You don't even understand what liking someone means, Beata," Sophia retorted, her frustration barely concealed. "I want Jeff to be the male lead in my manga," Beata said, completely serious. The air between the two became tense, and an awkward silence fell over us. The two girls locked eyes for what felt like ages before Sophia finally broke the quiet. "We'll talk about that later. Today, we're just here to buy your supplies." Despite her words, it was clear from her expression that Sophia had already made up her mind. There would be no more meetings between the two of us. If things continued this way, it was starting to feel like a twisted scenario of, we're best friends, but you want to be my sister-in-law. "Sophia, are we really going shopping inside the mall?" I asked cautiously. "Yes, we're here to help Beata pick out some intimate clothing. Can I maybe skip this one?" I tried, hoping for an out. "No," both of them shot back in unison, leaving no room for negotiation. And so, the single me was dragged along to a women's lingerie store, praying silently that they'd finish quickly. As I stood there awkwardly, head down and rubbing my temples, Beata suddenly picked up a black thong, looked up at me, and asked, "Does this look good?" I froze. I mean, this was a girl's intimate clothing. How was I supposed to answer that? "Does it look good?" Beata pressed on, clearly not giving up until she got a response. Left with no choice, I blurted out, "Black is too mature. Pink would suit you better." Beata had a petite, almost childlike appearance. Naturally, when I thought of someone like her, pink seemed more appropriate. Black was a mature color, and it definitely didn't match her vibe. "Then I'll get the pink one," Beata said, swapping the black thong for a pink one. The way she looked at me now had a curious spark, almost like she was testing something. "I want to wear it for you," she suddenly said. "Beata, stop," I exclaimed, shocked to see her already moving her hands toward the hem of her skirt. If I nodded, I had no doubt she'd take it off right then and there. No wonder Sophia said Beata lacked common sense. Only someone completely out of touch would consider stripping down in public like this. "Beata, put that away and save it for later when we're home," Sophia said, her face cold and stern. She had dealt with Beata's eccentric behavior before, but clearly, involving me in it made her more than a little upset. "But there's no one at home to help me wear it," Beata pouted innocently. I quickly added, "Did you forget your family is out of town?" Sophia sighed, clearly exasperated. "So, I want Jeff to help me," Beata said with hopeful eyes, looking straight at me. Having promised Beata's family that we'd take care of her for the week, we ended up all going back to the house together. After watching the two girls head upstairs, I finally collapsed onto the sofa, completely drained. But before I could even relax for a few seconds, a pair of hands suddenly covered my eyes. "Guess who?" A mature voice teased from behind, though the answer was all too obvious. "Vivian, welcome home." "Ugh, boring. I was hoping you'd guess wrong, so I could punish you a little." Vivian pouted playfully as she leaned over, her face hovering just above mine. "You can't blame me. Your voice is way too recognizable." "Liar. I even changed my voice just now," she said, wrapping her arms around me. Aside from her sultry voice, there was that intoxicating scent of hers too. "That's cheating, and cheaters deserve a little punishment." Just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, Vivian suddenly stopped and leaned in closer. She bent down from behind, her flexibility surprising me as I couldn't help but admire how easily she moved. Her nose gently brushed against me as she sniffed the air around me. Then, with complete certainty, she said, "There's another woman's scent on you besides Sophia's." How on earth did she know that? I couldn't even smell it myself. "Did you sneak out today and go on a date with another woman?" Her tone shifted sharply. Gone was the playful ease. It was replaced with a dangerous edge. Her expression tightened, her eyes darkened with suspicion, and the room's temperature seemed to drop. For a moment, I found myself questioning whether this was really Vivian, or if it was Sophia disguised as her. "You're feeling guilty, aren't you?" Vivian's sudden shift in tone caught me completely off guard. What happened next nearly made my heart stop. The usual tags I'd seen on Vivian disappeared, replaced with unsettling ones. Yandere, possessive, jealous. If I remembered correctly, her previous tags were more like independent, understanding, mature woman. How had she changed so drastically after just one day? "Tell me," who sent is on you? Her hands slowly wrapped around my neck, a twisted smile forming on her lips, sending a shiver down my spine. It's Beata, I stammered, barely managing to get the words out. Beata? Who is Beata? Vivian's voice quivered, and her arms tightened around my neck, making it hard for me to breathe. I felt like I was sinking underwater, desperate to come up for air. She's Sophia's classmate, I choked out. Sophia's classmate. Huh. At that, Vivian's grip instantly loosened, and I gasped for breath, finally able to take in much-needed air. Oh, it's just that naughty Sophia, she said, her expression softening as if her momentary outburst had never happened. She looked at me with concern, her voice now gentle and caring, like the Vivian I remembered. You didn't run into any trouble, did you? No, we just met Beata in the art studio at school, I replied, still trying to steady my breathing. I'm sorry, chef. It's my fault. Suddenly, Vivian stepped forward and hugged me tightly again. Sai, if you're going to apologize, why must you always get so handsy with me? I said, half joking, but exasperated. I was just worried that some bad woman might try to trick you, she explained softly, her tone tender once more. That's why I got a little carried away. I almost thought you were going to choke me to death. I half joked, trying to ease the tension. Of course not, dear. I'm very careful. At most, I'd just make you faint, Vivian replied with a soft laugh. And then what happens after I pass out? I asked, but she didn't answer. That silence only made me more uneasy. The choking sensation earlier was still fresh in my mind, a reminder that none of this was a figment of my imagination. Vivian's emotions always seemed to take a sharp turn whenever she sensed another girl's presence around me. This time was no different. She continued holding me tenderly in her arms, but the tension lingered until Sophia and Beata appeared at the top of the stairs. Mother, it's still broad daylight, Sophia remarked, seeing me enveloped in her mother's embrace as she descended. We're just playing around, Vivian said with a smile. Sophia, your wording sounds a bit off, I muttered, trying to lighten the mood. Vivian only smiled at her daughter's comment and didn't let go of me. Sophia's sharp eyes, however, immediately noticed the faint red marks on my neck. Mother, you're being too reckless. You've heard Jeff, Sophia said, her voice slightly accusatory. It's fine, Sophia. Vivian was just messing around. I quickly interjected, not wanting to spark any tension between the two of them. I want to play with Jeff too. Beata suddenly chimed in, walking toward me with her arms outstretched. Jeff, hug me. Ignoring the fact that I was still in Vivian's arms, Beata reached out and wrapped her arms around me as well. And just like that, I was caught in the middle, squished between Vivian and Beata like the filling in a sandwich. I could barely process what was happening as they held me tightly from both sides, neither of them showing any signs of letting go. You must be Beata, right? Vivian's displeasure was clear as she saw Jeff being shared between them. She reached through my waist and grabbed Beata by the shoulders. I am Beata, she replied, still holding on to me, seemingly unaware of why the older woman had grabbed her. Yet it didn't stop her from clinging to me. Could you please let go of my Jeff, Beata? Vivian asked, though her tone was anything but polite. No, I like Jeff, Beata responded without hesitation, but she failed to notice how Vivian's grip on me was slowly tightening. I'd already seen this side of Vivian earlier, and I knew this wasn't heading in a good direction. Alarmed, I quickly shouted, "Wait, don't get excited." In a desperate move, I started tickling Vivian. Jeff, stop. Ha, you little rascal, she laughed uncontrollably. Seizing the moment, I broke free from their grips as fast as I could. I hurried over to Sophia, knowing it was the safest spot. She immediately stepped in front of me, shielding me from the other two. You cheeky little thing, tickling me like that, Vivian said, not angry at all, but with a slight blush on her face from the playful struggle. Seeing that both Vivian and Beata had calmed down, I cautiously peeked out from behind Sophia and said, I don't mind spending time with everyone, but I think we need to set some ground rules. Ground rules? Just as I thought, all three of them focused their attention on me. Looking serious, I continued, first, when it comes to hugging, starting now, everyone can only hug me once a day. One time is way too little. Vivian immediately protested before I could finish. I countered Vivian's protest. So how many times a day do you want to hug me, Vivian? Let me think. At least 4, 5, 6, no, 8 times, Vivian exclaimed, as if she were haggling, quickly increasing the number 8-fold. Sophia stepped in. Let's stick to what Jeff said, 1 hug per day. While Sophia also wanted to keep me close, she knew it was more important to set limits on her mother. After all, she understood Vivian all too well. If left unchecked, the number of hugs could easily skyrocket, and she didn't want to deal with that. "Ah, Sophia, you're so strict," Vivian pouted playfully. Beata nodded in agreement, clearly enjoying the dynamic. "Second," I continued, "any form of physical contact has to be with my permission." I was most concerned about surprise attacks from Vivian and Beata. If I had some warning, at least I wouldn't be caught off guard and lose control of the situation. "All right," Vivian agreed without protest this time, confident in her ability to charm me whenever she wanted. And third, I added, "everyone needs to get along. No conflicts because of me." This was mostly directed at Vivian. Her mood swings were intense, and I wanted to avoid any unnecessary drama. "Since you've laid it out so clearly, I'll agree," Vivian said, her tone more relaxed. "I'll go get dinner started." She turned and headed toward the kitchen, seeming to accept that she couldn't push me too hard. I sighed with relief. "Thank you, Sophia. If it weren't for you, these rules wouldn't have been agreed to." "All right, Jeff, now's my turn." "The once-a-day hug," Sophia said with a grin, spreading her arms wide as she approached me. After dealing with Sophia, I finally felt a little relieved. From now on, these ground rules we set should help me avoid a lot of unnecessary conflicts. But the new label Stockings fetishist left me feeling a bit helpless, like I'd somehow turned into a total sleazeball. Monday morning, I woke up and suddenly heard a voice in my head. New ability unlocked, hypnosis. That's when I remembered my skills reset every Monday. I went to bed too early last night and forgot to check what the new ability was. Honestly, I thought the labeling skill I got last time was already twisted enough. I mean, just by tweaking a label, I could make someone love or hate another person. Being able to change someone's personality with a snap of a finger felt like something straight out of a villain's playbook in a novel. But this one? Even more sinister. Hypnosis? After reading the ability description, I realized it could make any conscious being completely obey me. That got me a little excited. This could be my ace in the hole. But I still needed to figure out how far the hypnosis could reach, how long it would last, and if there were any side effects once it wore off. Since I got up pretty early, I left the house without waking anyone. This was a high-end neighborhood, and as I walked down the street, I barely saw a soul. I thought to myself, there's no way I'm testing hypnosis on some random plants, right? With no test subject in sight, I was ready to head back. That's when I heard a sharp meow. Looking up, I spotted an angry-looking Maine Coon glaring at me. If this had happened before, I probably would have grabbed something to defend myself. But now, I'm not just any regular guy. I was just looking for a test subject, and this big cat practically delivered itself to me. Hypnosis. Activate. As soon as I shouted, the big cat froze in place and sat down. I gave it a command, and to my surprise, it followed. Because it had to sit suddenly while running, it let out a few sharp meows from the friction. I kept giving commands, and the cat, now looking almost lifeless, walked towards me obediently. "Shake hands." The cat cutely extended its paw and gave me a little shake. If anyone had been watching, they'd probably think I was some kind of animal trainer. "Good kitty." As I petted the cat's head, I couldn't help but marvel at how powerful the hypnosis was. It followed my orders without hesitation. Just as I was about to continue testing, a sweet-sounding voice echoed from afar. "Mimi, where are you?" I looked up and saw a figure anxiously approaching. As she got closer, I realized it was a stunning woman, mature yet striking, with pale skin and silver hair, clearly mixed race. Her figure was incredible, full of graceful curves. "Is this your cat?" I asked, glancing at the big cat I had just hypnotized, not expecting its owner to show up so quickly. I'm so sorry. Mimi is usually hostile to strangers. I always keep her locked up at home, but she slipped out while I wasn't paying attention," the woman apologized. She clearly knew her pet well, but seemed puzzled by how friendly it was being towards me. She could only assume it was because I seemed cute. The moment she saw me, she felt an inexplicable flutter in her heart. I stopped playing with the cat and focused on the woman in front of me, silently reading her labels. Careless, curious about cute animals, warm and hospitable. "Why haven't I seen you before?" The mature woman, clearly curious about me, asked. "I just moved here recently." I introduced myself briefly, not wanting her to get the wrong idea and think I was some suspicious stranger. "Oh, so you live at Vivian's place. I'm Elizabeth. Just call me Elizabeth," she said with a smile. "Are you one of Vivian's kids? How long are you staying here?" she asked seemingly out of nowhere. As if from the moment she first saw me, a warm affection had started to grow in her heart, and that feeling kept getting stronger. It was like she wished she could see me every day. I don't have any family left. Vivian took pity on me and brought me home. Ever since Vivian took me in, she hadn't mentioned anything about officially adopting me. I had tried asking her over the past couple of days, but she always brushed it off. It seemed like she had something else in mind. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to bring up something painful. That's my fault, Elizabeth said apologetically. Strangely enough, even though this was our first meeting, Elizabeth felt like my face and voice had already etched themselves deep in her heart. When she saw me lower my head, she felt an unexpected pang of sadness. Mrs. Elizabeth, are you all right? I noticed something off about her, sensing that her emotions seemed to shift because of me. But I hadn't done anything. My hypnosis had only been used on the cat. No, I'm fine, sorry. Elizabeth quickly snapped out of it. Thankfully, that odd feeling only lasted a moment, and she gradually returned to normal. I'm sorry for the scene. You just reminded me of someone. For a brief moment, she had even felt an urge to hug me tightly and comfort me. Who did I remind you of, Mrs. Elizabeth? I asked, probing gently. It's my daughter's father, Elizabeth said with a hint of melancholy in her voice. He hasn't been home for years because of work. Her tone carried a trace of sadness, and I wasn't sure how to respond. Her husband had been absent for years, leaving her to raise their daughter alone. It seemed like her life was filled with unspoken regret. Jeff, you should come over and hang out sometime. I'm sure my daughter would love to meet you, she said with a smile, inviting me warmly. But it wasn't just her daughter who seemed to like me. Elizabeth herself seemed eager to have me visit her home. Haha, we'll see. I forced a smile, trying to brush off the invitation politely. Later, when I got home, I casually mentioned to Vivian that I had run into Elizabeth. Vivian said she vaguely remembered Elizabeth and thought she seemed like a good person, but she didn't want me getting too close to her. Afraid of triggering Vivian's other side, I decided not to mention Elizabeth's invitation to her house. After dinner, Vivian drove me to school, Watson Academy. Jeff, if anyone bullies you, call me right away, Vivian said, giving me a serious look. I know, Vivian. Drive safe and take it easy on the road. I waved her off. Honestly, there was no need for her to drop me off. The school was only a few kilometers from home. After a bit of a lingering goodbye, Vivian finally started her Maserati and drove away. Once I watched her car disappear into the distance, I headed into the school. This place really lived up to its reputation as a school for the rich and privileged. The number of beautiful girls was overwhelming, and their makeup? Flawless. Thanks to this seducer label on me, as soon as I stepped onto campus, I drew a lot of attention from the girls. Thankfully, I slipped away quickly enough to avoid getting swarmed. Hello, teacher. I'm the new student here to check in. I stepped into the teacher's office and found the teacher who had helped me with my enrollment yesterday. She looked a bit surprised to see me so early. Jeff, you're here quite early, she said warmly. My class had over 40 students, most of them girls. As soon as I appeared at the classroom door, the atmosphere immediately became charged with excitement. What an adorable boy, one girl shouted enthusiastically. I knew I'd cause a bit of a stir, but I didn't expect things to escalate so quickly. Trying to avoid more trouble, I hurried to the front of the room and introduced myself. Hi everyone, I'm Jeff, 18 years old. Please take care of me from now on. As soon as I mentioned my age, the girls in the room got even more excited. Oh my God, only 18, the girls exclaimed in unison. Just then, the teacher stepped in. All right, everyone settle down. Let's give Jeff a chance to pick his seat. When they heard I had to choose a seat, the girls got even more worked up, especially one dressed in an extravagant outfit, waving at me nonstop. I glanced at her and immediately crossed that option off my list. Sitting next to her would definitely mean I'd be surrounded by girls for the rest of the day. Instead, my gaze landed on a boy in the corner of the room. He had a mushroom haircut, his bangs covering half his face, and he was wearing round glasses and suspenders, looking like he'd stepped right out of a variety show as the lead character. Hey, is the seat next to you taken? I asked him politely. To my surprise, the boy didn't look at me at all. Instead, he pressed his face against his desk, his body trembling slightly every now and then. Did I scare you? I asked, puzzled. It was the first time I had encountered such a situation. When he heard my question, the boy's trembling seemed to intensify. The more this happened, the more I wanted to sit next to him. His fragile demeanor stirred a protective instinct in me. Don't sit here. You'll get rejected," the boy muttered softly, his voice filled with self-doubt and loneliness, like he was a bundle of negative emotions. Curious, I glanced at the top of his head and silently activated my skill. His label appeared: social anxiety, timid, wants to be buried in spring. I had thought he might just have some anxiety, but I didn't expect it to be this serious. "I'm not afraid of being rejected. Besides, I want to be friends with you. My name's Jeff. It's nice to meet you," I said with a smile, extending my hand. The boy mumbled instinctively, "My name's Kyle." "That's a great name," I said, nodding as I shook his hand. Kyle's face turned slightly red, and he looked down, whispering, "No one's ever said that to me before." Just then, the bell rang, and several girls immediately crowded around me. "Jeff, I'm Eve, the leader of Class 3. One girl introduced herself from the crowd. She glanced at Kyle and said coldly, "You're new, so you probably don't know. This guy is the most hated person in our class." Her words echoed throughout the room, and not a single person stood up for Kyle. He lowered his head even further, already worrying that I would start avoiding him just like the others. But instead of acknowledging Eve, I turned back to Kyle and reassured him, "Don't worry, Kyle." Seeing me ignore her, Eve's face twisted into an ugly expression. "Jeff, get away from this disgusting loser. Who I choose to be friends with is none of your business. You bullies. All you know are these pathetic, low-life tactics," I responded coldly. I glared at the group of girls, and their labels showed all sorts of psychological disorders and darkness. Not a single one was innocent. It was no wonder Kyle had ended up like this. There was definitely a connection between his current state and these girls. "What are you talking about?" Eve demanded, with other girls chiming in. I was done wasting my breath. Silently, I activated my hypnosis. "All of you, stand up straight." In an instant, all the girls froze and stood at attention. "Now, confess all the terrible things you've done." Under the influence of my hypnosis, the classroom filled with voices as the girls began to recount, in full detail, the wrongs they had committed. Their rigid expressions and their confessions sent chills through the room. Every student was on edge, witnessing the scene unfold, stunned by how quickly everything had changed. I continued, "Now, go to the teacher and confess every one of your crimes." I wasn't going to get my hands dirty. My goal was for them to face the consequences themselves. Otherwise, how would I be any different from them? The entire class watched in silence as the bullies, now transformed into confessors, marched toward the office. Moments later, cries and screams erupted from inside, along with the sound of angry teachers reprimanding them. In the end, those girls met their fate. They were immediately expelled from the school. When Kyle came out of the office, he looked like he was in a daze. "Jeff, is this all a dream?" he asked, bewildered. Instead of going back to class, we walked over to the school field after leaving the building. "Congratulations, Kyle, for finally shattering your nightmare," I told him. No, Kyle shook his head firmly. "None of this is because of me. It's all thanks to you, Jeff." We spent the day lying on the grass, and after school, I waved goodbye to my new friend and headed home. As I reached my front door and was about to unlock it, a familiar voice suddenly called out from the side. "Is that Jeff? Just getting home." That melodic, mature voice. It was none other than Mrs. Elizabeth from earlier in the morning. "Good evening, Mrs. Elizabeth," I said, turning to see her gazing at me with her piercing blue eyes. "Jeff, why don't you come over to my house?" she said with a smile, inviting me once again. "I'm not sure that's a good idea," I said hesitantly. "Oh, it's nothing. My daughter's home too. You two might even become friends," she insisted, and before I knew it, she was pulling me into her house. "Jeff, welcome to my home," she said warmly. "Elizabeth, I really should head home. Vivian will be back soon." I quickly tried to come up with an excuse. In my mind, I knew if Vivian found out I went to another woman's house, things could get ugly fast. "Are you scared, Jeff?" Elizabeth asked, her smile never wavering. The more I seemed hesitant, the more determined she became. "Of course not," I quickly retorted. "Then are you scared of me, Jeff?" she teased, leaning in slightly. "Not that either," I denied immediately, feeling cornered. "Since you're not scared of anything, why are you in such a rush to leave?" Elizabeth said, pulling me further into the living room. "How do you like my house? Isn't it a bit like Vivian's?" she asked. The layout was so similar, given that both homes were the same style, that for a second, I almost thought I had walked into the wrong house. "Is this Vivian you mentioned as good as me?" She suddenly moved closer, her tone carrying a teasing edge. Ah, I wouldn't know about that, I said, pretending not to understand her question. Hee, what are you thinking about? Elizabeth whispered, her lips brushing near my ear, and her bell-like laughter echoed softly in my ear. Nothing at all, I replied, trying to maintain my composure. Really? Or maybe. She gazed at me intently, a sly smile forming on her lips as if she was reading right through me. Could you not get so close? I felt like I needed to break this increasingly tense atmosphere before things got out of hand. No, she said, her lips curling into a mischievous grin, her eyes gleaming with something unspoken. Mrs. Elizabeth, if we keep going like this, people might get the wrong idea, I said, trying to maintain my cool, though I couldn't shake the growing sense of unease. Don't worry, she smiled, dismissing my concerns with ease. Besides, I didn't plan on doing anything. I just wanted to offer you some fruit. Do you really need to do it like this just to offer fruit? I couldn't help but ask. Ordinary fruit doesn't need any special treatment. But when I'm the one offering, it's different. You're sure we're still talking about fruit, right? I asked cautiously. Of course, it's just fruit. Or did your mind wander somewhere else? Her smile grew even more playful as she magically produced a plate of fruit. Seeing that she was, in fact, offering real fruit, I finally felt a bit relieved. Here, open your mouth, Elizabeth said with a smile, offering me a piece of fruit. Just then, her daughter appeared at the top of the stairs, a girl with almond-shaped eyes. She looked about the same age as Sophia, but hadn't inherited her mother's curvy figure. Mom, I'm hungry, the girl mumbled sleepily, rubbing her eyes. The moment I heard her voice, I immediately flattened myself against the sofa, holding my breath. Mom, what are you doing lying down there? The girl asked, her voice filled with confusion as she looked in our direction. I'm doing yoga. I've gained a little weight lately, so I'm trying to keep in shape, Elizabeth calmly explained. Who are you trying to impress? Dad's not even home, her daughter scoffed, tossing her hair back and rolling her eyes at her mother. Oh, you never know, Elizabeth replied with a knowing smile, her tone full of hidden meaning. Mom, you're acting weird today, the girl said, sensing something off as she made her way down the stairs. I've just found something that I truly love, Elizabeth responded nonchalantly. You're right. You're always like this 3 days of enthusiasm, and then you get bored. I'm used to it by now, the girl huffed, clearly tired of her mother's whims. This time is different. This time, I mean it, Elizabeth said with a playful smile. Though it seemed like she was answering her daughter, her subtle glance down at me made it clear that she was signaling something else entirely. I'm starving. Mom, make me something to eat, the girl whined, shifting the conversation. There's cake in the fridge, Elizabeth said with a laugh. At the mention of dessert, the girl's eyes lit up, and her attention was instantly diverted. She dashed toward the fridge, bouncing with excitement, her earlier curiosity completely forgotten. Jeff, do you like my daughter? Or do you like me more? Elizabeth suddenly hit me with a tricky question. Faced with this impossible choice, I quickly came up with a diplomatic answer. You're both beautiful. It's impossible to say who's better. Such a smooth talker, Elizabeth winked, though it was clear from her expression that she wasn't completely satisfied with my response. Little Bubba is not being honest. Are you ready for your punishment? She teased as she leaned in closer, seemingly about to kiss me. I took the opportunity to wriggle free, thinking to myself, I am never coming back here. Even after I got home, I still felt uneasy. Elizabeth's boldness was beyond anything I had expected, flirting with me right in front of her daughter. To make matters worse, her daughter goes to the same school as me. How was I supposed to face her in school after having this complicated and unclear relationship with her mom? Bubba, why are you back so late? Sophia's voice suddenly came from behind, startling me just as I was trying to calm down. I got held up by something, I replied, trying to sound casual. You smell like perfume. Looks like you've made a new friend at school. A girl's scent, she said, sniffing the air around me, her eyebrows furrowing slightly. How could her sense of smell be so sharp? It was almost absurd that she could instantly pick up on another woman's scent just by standing near me. Yeah, there was this one girl at school, I said with a smile, hoping she'd think the smell was from one of my female classmates. Oh, I see. Bubba really is a kind person, Sophia said after hearing about my day at school, especially Kyle's situation. She seemed to feel some empathy and hugged me tightly, even more so than usual, as if she didn't want to let go. Those bullies were so cruel. If only Kyle had met you sooner, Sophia sighed softly, resting her head gently against my cheek. Sophia's affectionate gestures were always well-balanced, never too overwhelming. After we parted, I suddenly remembered that little purple-haired girl. "Where's Beata?" I asked. "Beata locked herself in her room. She's probably thinking about her next painting," Sophia replied. Hearing that, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. At least I wouldn't have to worry about Beata clinging to me for now. "You relax here for a bit. I'll head to the kitchen and make something to eat," Sophia said. "Sure, Sophia," I said as I watched her head into the kitchen. But just as she disappeared, Beata snuck down the stairs, moving quietly. "Beata, you..." I started, but before I could finish, she had already grabbed onto my arm, hugging it tightly. "There's something wrong with my project," she whispered, in a voice only the two of us could hear. It was clear she was deliberately avoiding Sophia, making it hard to believe this wasn't intentional. Curious, I asked, "What kind of problem?" "It's not about the painting. Come with me," Beata said quickly, tugging me upstairs before I could protest. This was my first time entering a girl's room. The space was large, with a drawing board near the balcony. "Beata, what's the problem?" "I'm no help with painting," I said, feeling completely out of my depth. "It's not the painting," Beata frowned, placing her hand on her stomach. "My belly feels weird, like it's all bloated. Maybe you've been eating too many snacks lately?" I asked, a bit exasperated, trying to keep up with her erratic thoughts. "No, it's not that. There's blood too," she added, suddenly lifting her skirt to show me. 我立刻僵住，强迫自己不去看 Beata 的裙摆下方。"This is your period," I finally understood. Beata's confusion came from experiencing her first period, something that, to her, must have seemed like a serious issue. But it was just a normal biological process. For someone like Beata, who lacked basic knowledge, this could seem alarming, but it wasn't anything out of the ordinary. It was clear her understanding of these things was far from what most people knew, even about something as simple as menstruation. "Every woman bleeds like this every month," I said awkwardly, scratching my head, realizing just how bizarre it felt to be explaining this. Beata nodded, but she still looked puzzled, with that same innocent expression on her face. "Sophia said I should use this," she said, holding out some sanitary products. "Yeah, you definitely need to use that, but you should go to Sophia for help." "I can't really help you with that," I said, quickly turning down her request, as this was something way too personal for me to get involved in. "Why do I need to ask Sophia? Why can't a boy help? You're different from others? Or do you not like me?" Beata asked, her voice full of hurt. I was at a loss, completely tongue-tied and unsure of how to respond. Just then, there was a sudden knock on the door, loud and urgent. "Beata, open the door. Is Jeff in there with you?" Sophia's voice came from the other side, laced with worry and irritation, a sign her mood was quickly souring. "Beata, hurry up and change," I urged, feeling a sense of panic rise. Thankfully, the door was locked, giving me a bit of relief. If Sophia had walked in and seen this scene, things would have spiraled out of control fast, probably worse than one of Vivian's episodes. First, I hurriedly adjusted Beata's skirt back to its proper place. "So you're really in there together?" Sophia's voice grew more volatile as she heard the commotion inside. The tension in her tone made it clear that her temper was on the verge of snapping. "Beata, hurry up. We're running out of time," I urged, but she ignored me completely. Instead, she pressed her hands against my head, forcing me closer to her. "Stop, Beata." The faint scent lingering around her made me break out in a cold sweat, my nerves on edge. "Do you like it?" Beata asked excitedly, as if she was enjoying the chaos she was causing. This isn't about liking or not. I was growing more anxious, drenched in sweat. "Beata, open the door right now, or I'm really gonna get angry." Sophia's voice from outside was growing sharper, filled with impatience. It was like she sensed something was wrong. "Hold on, I'm opening the door." I quickly slipped out from under Beata's skirt, panicking as I fixed her clothes and gave her a once-over to make sure nothing was out of place. Only then did I dare unlock the door. "What were you two doing in here?" Sophia asked coldly as she stormed in. She shot me a sharp glare before turning her scrutinizing gaze on Beata. "Nothing. We didn't do anything," I quickly responded, trying to keep calm. There was no way I could tell her the truth. Sophia would probably explode right then and there. "Nothing bad? I just needed Jeff's help," Beata said innocently, tilting her head as she casually held up the sanitary products. "That's not considered bad? You have no sense of boundaries between boys and girls." Sophia's expression darkened, realizing her clueless friend had crossed a line into something incredibly inappropriate. Jeff, did you actually help her? Sophia's eyes were ice cold as she turned her gaze back to me, clearly demanding the truth. Of course not. I stopped Beata immediately. I quickly explained under Sophia's piercing gaze, desperately hoping Beata would get the hint from my frantic blinking and go along with the story. Jeff noticed I'd already changed, so he didn't go any further. Beata said earnestly, just as I was hoping she wouldn't say something reckless. You airhead, I helped you change this morning, Sophia started, but then suddenly paused, realizing something was off. Jeff, care to explain how exactly you knew? It's because Beata told me. Sophia, you're overthinking this. I quickly interjected, worried that Sophia might let her temper flare out of control. But I still feel like you're hiding something, Jeff, Sophia said, her tone full of suspicion. Not wanting the situation to escalate, I stepped forward and gently held her hand, looking into her eyes. Sophia, it's really not what you think. Sophia stared at me for a moment before finally relenting. Fine, I won't press you about this time, but don't let me catch you sneaking around again. Sophia, you're such a killjoy, Beata huffed, turning back to her drawing board by the balcony. Although she pretended not to care, I could tell from her earlier ambush that she was quite pleased with herself. Jeff, let's go. It's almost time for dinner, Sophia said softly, her earlier frustration fading. To be honest, Sophia's cooking had inherited much of her mother's skill, good enough to score an 80 in my book. Dinner tonight was just the three of us, as Vivian had called to say she'd be home late. After we finished dinner and cleaned up, I was ready to head to bed for the night. Just as I was about to lie down, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Vivian standing there, dressed in a deep red nightgown, her long hair cascading down her shoulders, radiating a mature allure. Vivian, I was just about to go to sleep, I whispered, trying to keep things calm. How about I join you? Vivian said playfully, sitting on the bed with a soft smile. I suddenly don't feel so sleepy anymore, I replied awkwardly, knowing full well that if I actually lay down next to her, things could easily spiral into something unpredictable. Bubba, if you're not sleepy, how about giving me a massage? Without hesitation, Vivian laid down on the bed in front of me, her voice soft. I'm so tired, and I really need my Bubba to help me relax. Massage. The word itself made me hesitate. Massaging her meant getting physical, and there's a line between men and women that I was nervous about crossing. Why not ask Sophia to help you with that? No, I want you, Bubba. Come on, don't just stand there. Once you're done, you can rest, she urged gently. I swallowed hard, mostly because the sight in front of me was impossible to ignore. The way she positioned herself was almost too tempting to refuse. The next morning, I woke up with dark circles under my eyes. The massage had been a real ordeal for me. Thankfully, Vivian didn't take things any further afterward, but the tension had left me tossing and turning all night. The following days were surprisingly peaceful. I spent my time at school hanging out with Kyle and Gino, and back at home, I was either occasionally ambushed by Beata or being looked after by Vivian and Sophia with their gentle care. There weren't any situations that required me to use my special abilities, which, honestly, was a bit of a relief. It's Friday and school let out half an hour early. I stood at my usual spot, waiting for the car, but the familiar Maserati wasn't there. Without a phone to call anyone, Vivian had told me that other women might try to mess with me, so she wouldn't let me carry one to avoid contact with them. I was left stranded. The downside of not having a phone was clear. No way to reach anyone. I figured the walk home was about 3 kilometers, which would only take about half an hour. After a week of being driven to and from school, I knew the route well enough. I passed through a small alleyway, and soon I was at the traffic lights. Just as I turned around, I spotted someone familiar, Jamie. I gave her a quick glance, and 3 labels popped into my head. Rich girl, extremely cautious, loves loyalty. After seeing that, my instinct was to stay away. We didn't belong in the same world. To my surprise, while waiting for the light, Jamie spoke up, "Hey Jeff." I was taken aback. Jamie knew my name? How do you know who I am? I asked without thinking. Just as Jamie was about to explain, a van with no plates suddenly pulled up. Out jumped 7 or 8 masked men, and before we knew it, they had us both in the van. When we got to an abandoned factory, Jamie and I were tied up to chairs with ropes. It was a tense moment, but Jamie remained completely calm. "Aren't you scared?" I asked, confused by her calmness. "I'm used to it. Being in a position of power comes with risks," Jamie replied coolly. As the heir to the wealthiest family, she was obviously more composed than anyone else would be. "And yet, Jeff, You don't seem panicked either, Jamie added. That's because I'm not like you. I don't come from some prestigious background. I responded with a bitter smile. But have you noticed? They didn't bother covering our eyes, Jamie pointed out softly. Her words reminded me of something I had read in a news story in my past life. Most kidnappers are careful to hide their identities, especially avoiding letting hostages see their faces. Unless, of course, they had no intention of letting us live from the start. This isn't an ordinary kidnapping, I whispered. If they were just after money, snatching you wouldn't be a big deal. But if they have another motive, even your high status won't help. Even with this realization, Jamie remained calm, turning her head toward me, as if expecting to see fear on my face. It's definitely not good, I said, but why would they kidnap us at the intersection? Someone with your status shouldn't fall into such a trap. Jeff, you're just like me, completely unconcerned about your own safety, Jamie replied with a quiet indifference. I wanted to say something, but the words got caught in my throat. I could sense her detachment from life, maybe because of her upbringing. Still, I couldn't reveal my own abilities now. They had to be kept hidden for when the time was right. As for why my bodyguards didn't show up, it's simple. I was betrayed. Those kidnappers are my own security team, Jamie said, her voice as calm as ever. Jamie, you've really had it rough, I said. Despite being dragged into this mess because of her, I didn't blame her. Instead, I tried to comfort her. Jamie seemed surprised by my reaction and glanced at me sideways, her expression slightly shifting. Just then, the door swung open, and the kidnappers entered the room. Apologies, miss. We're just following orders, said the leader, a burly man, as he walked up to Jamie and gave her a respectful nod. Let me guess, this was all orchestrated by my useless brother, wasn't it? Jamie asked calmly. You're right, miss. From the start, we've been working for the young master, the man admitted with a nod. Jamie smiled for the first time, but it was a cold, mocking smile. We're just tools, forced to follow orders from above, the man said, lowering his head with a hint of regret. Maybe Jamie was a good boss, but even she wasn't free from the constraints of her situation. Can you at least let him go? Jamie asked steadily, gesturing toward me. He has nothing to do with this. Sorry, miss, but the young master ordered us to stage an accident, and he's the perfect scapegoat, the man replied. It was clear this kidnapping had been meticulously planned, with the intent of pinning the blame on an innocent bystander. I quickly realized their plan. The moment I met Jamie, I was destined to be dragged into this bottomless vortex. Blame your bad luck, the leader said, his tone flat and emotionless. You've made one mistake. I cut him off, my voice steady. What? The man's sudden tension was obvious as he reevaluated the boy they had kidnapped. Jamie meeting me was her stroke of luck, but choosing me? That was your misfortune. Don't try anything clever. You're not getting out of this, the man replied, though I could sense a flicker of unease in him. He didn't know why, but something about my confidence was unsettling him. Calm down, I said, and immediately activated my hypnosis. Before my words had fully left my mouth, the leader had already walked over to me and started untying our ropes. I'll free you both right now, he said. Jamie, now free from her restraints, looked at me in disbelief. She knew how loyal these men were to their orders, yet they had been swayed so easily. Boss, you can't let them go. Aren't you afraid of punishment? One of the underlings shouted as they began closing in, blocking all exits. Punishment? What punishment? I sneered. Let us go, and you'll be richly rewarded. As I finished speaking, I pulled them all into a deeper state of hypnosis. In the next moment, the once menacing group of kidnappers parted to make way for us. Jamie, who had been silently observing, suddenly had a glimmer of admiration in her eyes. Let's get out of here, I said, grabbing Jamie's arm as we quickly made our way through the corridor. No one made any move to stop us. It wasn't until we were out of sight that gunfire erupted from the factory behind us in synchronized bursts. To prevent them from chasing after us once the hypnosis wore off, I had implanted a suggestion for them to turn on each other. I hadn't expected them to be armed, but I didn't feel guilty. After all, they were out for my life. I was only protecting myself. Jeff, does this mean we're bonded for life now? Jamie asked calmly as we escaped. I think partners in adversity is a more fitting term, I said, correcting her with a glance. Jamie didn't mention what had happened in the factory, nor did she pry into my abilities, which was a relief. Do you remember the way back? She asked, breaking the silence. I don't really know the way. We came in that van, and I only remember passing through some woods. We're on the outskirts now, So maybe we should head back to the city first, I suggested. Without another word, Jamie took my hand. We walked through the forest and then along the road for another half an hour. What surprised me most was that Jamie didn't complain about being tired, not once. Maybe it was because our fingers were interlocked, and that gave her strength. "Jeff, how are you planning to get home?" she asked. "I'll probably grab a cab," I replied, looking up at the sky. The sunset bathed the street in a soft glow. If I took a cab home now, I might avoid getting scolded by my family for being late. "Can you come with me somewhere first?" Jamie still held my hand tightly, showing no sign of letting go. "Where to?" I hesitated, worried that if I delayed much longer, going home late might get me into trouble. "Just to the food street up ahead," she said softly. "You want to go to a food street?" I was even more conflicted now, knowing that spending more time out could mean problems at home. "Jeff, have you ever heard the story of the princess who became Cinderella?" Jamie asked. Then, she let go of my hand and spun around under the streetlight. Her gray dress twirled in the golden light, and a bright smile spread across her face. In that moment, she looked like a completely different person, no longer the wealthy heiress, but just an ordinary girl. "So it's really the princess becoming Cinderella," I blurted out without thinking. "Because of my family, I've never allowed myself to do anything that might tarnish my status," Jamie said as she stopped spinning, a hint of sadness on her face. "But now, I want to take this chance to be a normal person and fulfill a small wish I've always had." She extended her pale hand toward me, her eyes shimmering with hope. "I will," I replied after a brief silence, unable to refuse her most heartfelt request. "Meeting you today has been the luckiest moment of my life," Jamie said softly, stepping closer as she gently took my hand. It was rush hour, and the streets were bustling with people. Jamie seemed unusually excited, as if she wanted to make up for years of missing out on all the simple pleasures. We strolled down the street, stopping at the last stall, where a variety of handmade trinkets were laid out. "Jeff, buy me a gift," Jamie said, her eyes calm, yet full of warmth. Her request was hard to refuse. "How about this one?" I picked out a pink ribbon bow from the colorful assortment. After paying, we quickly moved away from the stall. "Can you help me put it on?" Jamie suddenly stopped near the end of the street, gathering her long hair up into a graceful bun, waiting for me to finish the final touch. I carefully tied the bow into her hair. "Does it look good?" Jamie swayed her head gently, looking at me with hopeful eyes. "It looks beautiful, like pure, unblemished beauty touched by a color that's uniquely mine," I complimented sincerely. "I'm glad," she said with a satisfied nod. But then her expression changed, and with a sigh, she added, "Unfortunately, Cinderella has to turn back into a princess now." Her gaze turned sharp, and the softness from moments earlier vanished, replaced by the commanding presence of the heiress she truly was. Jamie turned and gracefully walked toward the black Rolls-Royce parked by the street, instantly transforming back into the high-end mighty princess she truly was. Watching her disappear into the car, I chuckled softly, shaking my head in wonder. The way she switches between princess and Cinderella, it's really something, I thought. But then I remembered Vivian was waiting for me at home. The thought of her gentle face made me rush to hail a taxi and head back as quickly as I could. By the time I reached the front door, the sky had just turned dark. I sighed with relief. I'd made it home before nightfall. I prayed that Vivian and the others wouldn't be too upset. I opened the door cautiously, stepping inside with a lingering sense of unease. The house was brightly lit, and as I entered the living room, I was greeted by three figures sitting side by side on the couch. Vivian was the first to turn her head. Her usually gentle expression was now replaced by a cold, stern look. Sophia's face was as icy as a frozen glacier, while Beata, the little one, pouted as if trying to look angry, though her adorable face couldn't quite pull it off. You didn't have to wait for me. I already ate outside," I said, glancing at the untouched dishes on the table. I immediately knew I'd messed up. The food, perfectly arranged, hadn't been touched, meaning they had all waited for me, and a lot of time had passed. "Let's not talk about anything else right now, Jeff. Come here." Vivian's voice was much sterner than usual, lacking her normal warmth and with a sharp edge to it. I knew now wasn't the time to make excuses. I needed to own up quickly. "Vivian, I'm sorry," I said, not waiting for her to say more, bowing my head in sincere apology. "Do you know exactly what you did wrong?" Vivian asked, her arms crossed, her voice still icy. "I shouldn't have gone out and left you all waiting for so long," I said, keeping my head down, avoiding their gaze. I couldn't possibly explain what had really happened today. The events were too unbelievable and far too dangerous. Do you have any idea how worried we were? Vivian's tone finally softened as she saw me admitting my mistake. The coldness on her face began to melt into concern and a lingering fear of what might have happened. You really scared us, Bubba. Do you understand? Sophia chimed in, her voice carrying a hint of frustration, though her eyes held a different, more understanding message. Sophia, I know I was wrong. I'll make sure to come home on time from now on, I quickly assured her. And what about me? Beata piped up, her cute face full of expectation as she pointed to herself. Beata, I won't make you worry again either, I said earnestly, determined to make amends. Well, since you're so sincere in your apology, we'll let it go this time, Vivian said, her tone shifting suddenly as a mischievous smile crept onto her face. But for making us worry this much, a punishment is still necessary. Sophia, do you remember how I used to punish you when you didn't come home on time as a child? Vivian asked, pretending to recall a distant memory. Mother, please don't bring that up. Sophia suddenly became flustered, clearly embarrassed by the mention of her childhood misdeeds. Oh, was it spanking? Vivian said, feigning an innocent realization. Mother, stop it. Sophia's face turned red as she squirmed, utterly mortified by the public revelation of her childhood embarrassment. She looked like she wanted the ground to swallow her up. Vivian, you've got to be joking, right? I really don't want to go through with this kind of punishment, I protested quickly, trying to avoid the embarrassing situation. Not joking at all, Jeff. Come here, Vivian said again, her tone mock serious. No, Mother, stop being unreasonable, Sophia interjected, firmly against the idea. Since Sophia objects, I guess I'll change the punishment, Vivian said with a mischievous smile. She then extended her arms, and in the next second, I lost my balance as she pulled me into her embrace, the softness pressing against me in a smothering hug. This is your punishment. Just stay like this and reflect for a bit, Vivian teased, still holding me tightly. Mother, that's enough, isn't it? You're gonna make him really uncomfortable, Sophia said with a hint of jealousy in her voice, clearly not pleased with the situation. Haha, all right, I forgive your shameless behavior this time, Vivian laughed, completely ignoring the disapproving look from Sophia. After a few moments of her playful punishment, she seemed to get lost in her thoughts. When she finally left the room, Sophia gestured for me to sit beside her. Come sit here, she said softly. I walked over to where she sat, and as I approached, the corner of her mouth curled into a faint, beautiful smile. But she quickly composed herself and spoke more seriously. Now, don't you think you owe me an explanation? Who exactly were you out with today that made you forget all about the time and coming home? Faced with her questioning, I had no choice but to use Kyle as my cover story. I explained that I had been out helping him with his social anxiety, which was why I lost track of time and came home so late. Sophia's expression remained stern, and she gave me a serious reprimand, warning me not to casually spread my kindness to others. She knew all too well the power of my charm, even jokingly saying, with just a little bit of your kindness, you could attract anyone, even guys. She wasn't wrong either. Kyle had already developed feelings for me. In the end, I had to sign some unequal treaties just to escape her lecture and finally retreat back to my room. When Monday morning came, I woke up and checked my newly unlocked ability. It seemed the hypnosis skill had partially remained, but I now had something new. Time control? Time control? This system is seriously getting out of hand, I muttered in disbelief. With hypnosis, my adaptable personality, and now the ability to control time, it felt like I was gaining unstoppable power. If I unlocked X-ray vision next week, I have the full set of classic anime powers. Time stop, I whispered. Instantly, the world around me froze. The birds outside my window hung, suspended in midair, and everything fell completely silent. Only my own heartbeat continued, strong and steady. Maybe I should check out the second floor? I thought to myself. Normally, I wouldn't dare set foot on the second floor. The women living there would surely demand something from me if they caught me sneaking around. Let's start with Beata, I decided, pushing open her door. Inside, I found her fast asleep on her soft, cozy bed, her blanket kicked to the floor. I walked over and first tugged her shirt back down, covering her exposed belly, then gently pulled the blanket up to cover her again. Before leaving, I couldn't resist giving her soft, rosy cheek a little pinch. As expected, there was no reaction. She was sound asleep. I walked into Sophia's room next. She seemed to be getting ready to fix her freshly washed hair. Her black strands still had tiny droplets hanging at the ends, but because time had paused, the water stayed suspended in midair. With a smile, I grabbed the hairdryer from the table and started gently drying her hair. How on earth does Sophia take care of her hair? I wondered. Her hair was so smooth and soft. This was my first time blow-drying a girl's hair, so I was extra careful. After a few minutes, I made sure her hair looked perfect before quietly slipping out of the room. With time still frozen, I thought I'd check out Vivian's room. But as soon as I opened the door, I immediately shut it again. Look away, look away, I repeated to myself, bolting down the stairs. Good thing time was paused. If Vivian had known what I just saw, she probably wouldn't have let me leave so easily. Back in my room, I calculated that the time pause lasted about 10 minutes. Thinking back to what had just happened made me chuckle, especially imagining Sophia's confused face when she realized her hair was already dry. One more time freeze left. I'll test it out at school, I decided to myself. Just as I walked into school, I felt someone tap me lightly on the shoulder. Turning around, I saw it was Jamie. Morning, Jamie, I started to say, but she quickly covered my mouth. Jeff, did you forget our little deal? Jamie pressed herself closer, her fingers lightly tracing my neck, teasing my Adam's apple. When I finally called her Jamie like she wanted, she let me go, clearly satisfied. Did you deal with that mastermind from last week? I paused and asked about the kidnapping incident. That's nothing you need to worry about, Jamie responded swiftly. She leaned in close and whispered in my ear, even if you wanted to get involved, you wouldn't be able to find them. Her words sent a chill down my spine. She was even more ruthless than I had imagined. Hey, Jamie, why are you clinging on to me again? Just when things started to feel a bit more relaxed, Jamie suddenly wrapped her arms around mine. Isn't it normal for friends to be close? She replied as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. I wanted to argue, no, it's not normal. This kind of closeness is clearly something only couples do. But Jamie had just calmed down, and I didn't want to push my luck. All right, let me walk you back to class then. I gave in, hoping we wouldn't run into Gino and cause any unnecessary trouble. Jeff, you've got it all wrong. Jamie suddenly turned her head, a playful smile forming on her lips. What? I froze, and a bad feeling crept over me. Congrats, you guessed right. We're in the same class, she said with a grin. And as a reward, you get to be my seatmate. When we reached the classroom door, the whole room went dead silent. The sight of the school's cold and untouchable beauty clinging tightly to my arm was enough to leave everyone speechless. Looks like Jamie got here first. Just then, our homeroom teacher appeared at the door, breaking the awkward silence. Jeff, head back to your seat, I said as casually as possible, giving Jamie a gentle pat on the shoulder. Though she seemed reluctant, she finally let go. As soon as I sat down, Gino's slightly irritated voice whispered in my ear. Jeff, how did you end up getting involved with her? I didn't want to get dragged into that conversation, so I quickly changed the subject. Pay attention to what the teacher's saying. At that moment, Jamie stood confidently at the front of the class, scanning the room. My name's Jamie, so don't be surprised. Her piercing gaze swept across the classroom, and most students quickly looked down, avoiding eye contact. But when her eyes landed near me, she raised an eyebrow slightly. Gino, sitting next to me, didn't back down and glared right back at her. Didn't you say you just met her? Gino muttered under his breath, clearly suspicious. I need to sit here. Could you move? Jamie walked over to Gino, pointing calmly at his seat. Why should I give up my seat for you? Gino responded, his tone sharp, not backing down at all. Because Jeff and I are good friends, Jamie said coolly. Oh yeah? Well, Jeff happens to be my best buddy, Gino shot back, throwing his arm over my shoulder. Jamie's voice remained calm. Your reaction is a bit much. Seems like you've got double standards. When you hugged his arm earlier, that didn't exactly match what you're saying now. Gino stared her down, unfazed. Looks like you've got a real problem with me, Jamie. Why don't you introduce yourself properly? My name's Gino. So, planning some revenge, huh? Gino stood his ground, unflinching. Jeff, they're not really going to fight, are they? Kyle, sitting nearby, whispered, sensing the tension. I don't think so. I chuckled nervously, shaking my head. After all, we were still in the classroom. Jamie didn't seem like she was going to escalate things further. Instead, she forced a few students in the front row to move and took a seat by herself. As soon as the bell rang, the other students, unable to handle the tension, rushed out of the classroom. The only ones left were the four of us sitting in the back, not moving. "It's lunchtime, Jamie. Aren't you leaving?" Feeling uneasy from the tension between the two, I thought I should at least try to get one of them to go. Gino and Jamie clearly weren't getting along, and if this kept up, a confrontation was inevitable. I glanced at Gino. He sat motionless, showing no signs of leaving. So I turned my attention to Jamie instead. "Jeff, are you planning to come with me?" Jamie's eyes lit up, completely ignoring my real intention. "Jeff's staying with us. He's not going anywhere," Gino said flatly, sitting up straighter and staring at Jamie with open hostility as he subtly moved closer to me. "Jamie, even if we're friends, don't you think you're taking this a bit too far?" I barely got the words out before my shoulder was almost touching Gino's, and Jamie's expression began to darken. "And what's that got to do with you? This is between me and Jeff." Gino continued to ignore Jamie's growing anger, poking at her even more. "So, Jeff, what do you think?" Jamie asked, her eyes now sharp and filled with danger, clearly fed up. The tension between them was only getting worse, and they threw the problem right back at me. I felt stuck in the middle, wondering how things had gotten so complicated with the two of them. In the midst of that awkward standoff, I made a quick decision to use my special ability, time pause. I knew if I didn't, these two were definitely going to come to blows. Out on the school field, Jamie was clinging tightly to me, her arms wrapped around mine like a pair of handcuffs. After I left earlier, both girls had gone looking for me, but Jamie, being more resourceful, had found me first. "Jamie, are you calmed down now?" I asked cautiously. "Why do you think I'd be mad?" Jamie smiled brightly. She always smiled like this when we were alone, but the more she did, the more on edge I felt. It was like the calm before a storm. "Because I snuck out earlier and left you two there," I admitted, feeling guilty. "You sneaking off actually made me happy," she said. "Why?" I asked, confused. "If you hadn't, we wouldn't have this chance to be alone." Her smile grew even brighter, but then she added, "But if you want me to forgive you, you'll have to come with me to a special place." Without waiting for a response, Jamie eagerly started pulling me forward. "Where are we going, Jamie?" I asked. "Don't ask. You'll find out once we're in the car." Ahead of us was a black Rolls-Royce. We got in, and Jamie immediately sat close to me, pressing right up against my side. "Jamie, could you scoot over a little?" The car was spacious, but she still insisted on sitting as close as possible. "When you're in my car, I make the rules," she said, her demeanor subtly shifting. As the car started moving, I suddenly felt a weight on my leg. "Jamie, what are you?" I looked down in surprise to find her lying across my lap. When a girl lies down, it's best if she's not interrupted. Her big, beautiful eyes stared directly at me. "But what if you fall?" I said, feeling uneasy. "I trust that before I fall, you'll catch me," Jamie said casually, even shifting into a more comfortable position. "Well, just keep lying there then," I replied with a sigh. Jamie trusted me this much, and there wasn't much else I could say. At least this was less awkward compared to some of the close encounters with Vivian and the others. I glanced down at Jamie's peaceful sleeping face. At this moment, she seemed to have lost that intimidating aura, making her look even more captivating. The car was quiet, steadily moving forward. In the calm of the moment, I leaned back against the seat, slowly drifting off to sleep myself. What I didn't notice was that Jamie suddenly opened her eyes, whispering softly, "Sleep, sleep. Only when you're asleep can I do whatever I want." Her voice was as light as the wind, but I was too deep in slumber to hear it. I don't know how much time passed, but I felt like I was surrounded by something soft, something getting closer. In my dream, I couldn't quite make it out, but the sensation was so gentle it almost made it hard to breathe. I kept gasping for air until I suddenly woke up with a start. Opening my eyes, I found myself in a completely unfamiliar place. "Jeff, we've arrived," Jamie's voice whispered in my ear. Hearing her, I slowly came to my senses. Where are we?" I mumbled, still groggy. "Of course, we're at my place," she said nonchalantly. I looked around, stunned by the vast and luxurious room. I couldn't believe it. She had brought me to her house. Jamie gently placed her hands on my shoulders and effortlessly lifted me up into her arms, cradling me like a princess. As I rested against her, I listened to her softly speak of her family's longing and resentment. "You've really been through a lot," I said with sympathy. "Life in a powerful family is far from the glamorous image it portrays. The moment my mother left, that innocent girl inside me died," Jamie whispered in my ear. The calmer she spoke, the more I could sense the storm of emotions swirling beneath the surface. "If you ever need help, Jamie, you can count on me," I said quietly, understanding just how hard it must be to face her entire family alone. "It's no longer necessary." Jamie rested her head against my back, her tone still calm, but the air around us seemed to grow colder. "I've already taken care of my father and anyone in the family who opposed me." Then she continued, "Jeff, do you know what I've been wanting to do most since I became the head of the family?" "No idea," I began, thinking it might be revenge, but she had already said that part was over. "What I want most," she said, her voice suddenly chilling, "is to bring you into my family as my husband." Her words sent a shiver through me. My heart raced, and I felt my hands and feet go cold. "Jeff, don't tell me you don't want that." Jamie's aura shifted in an instant, becoming overwhelmingly intense. The air in the room grew so heavy that it felt hard to breathe. "It's not about whether I want it or not, but why use the word husband?" I asked cautiously, afraid of provoking her further. "Of course, I want to bring you into my family and offer the entire wealth of the family as a bride price," she said, wrapping her arms tightly around me from behind. Her breath was soft against my ear, but her words filled me with a sense of deep unease. "I'm not interested in any of the family power or wealth," I explained helplessly, trying to ease the sudden tension. "Jeff, are you rejecting me because of Vivian and her mother?" Jamie's voice grew colder. "Your connection with them isn't that deep." Her words hit me hard, and I could feel the hostility in her tone. "Jamie, don't do anything crazy," I quickly said, trying to calm her down. "Jeff, you're panicking. I can hear your heartbeat getting faster." Jamie whispered calmly in my ear. "Yeah, a little," I admitted, my nerves on edge. The fact that she brought up Vivian's family made me wary of what she might do. "You seem very attached to this Vivian." Jamie's voice remained unnervingly calm. "Are you trying to repay her? Or perhaps planning to become her son-in-law? Or maybe even her husband?" "I only see them as family. How could I have those kinds of thoughts?" I explained nervously, realizing how completely Jamie had taken control of the conversation. I was left scrambling to keep up. "I believe you," she said, her tone icy, "but it seems they have other intentions for you." As she spoke, Jamie's hands slowly started to wrap around my neck, the tension in the air suddenly skyrocketing. "If anything happens to them, I'll make sure you join them," I said, my tone becoming more serious, feeling the slight tremor in the air behind me. "Jeff, are you threatening me over those women?" Jamie's voice trembled, her emotions no longer calm. "And what about me? Where do I stand in your heart?" "Jamie, you're important too. We've been through so much together, haven't we?" I tried to reassure her, hoping to defuse the situation. "But you know I'm not satisfied with just being called a friend," she said, pressing harder. Her relentless approach was overwhelming, and I could feel myself struggling to keep up. "Am I not as important as your so-called family?" Jamie pressed, her voice thick with tension. "Don't you dare stay silent. Tell me the truth." I wanted to explain further, but she didn't stick to that line of questioning for long. Instead, she shifted to something even more difficult. "They were the first people I met." I began, but Jamie cut me off. "No need to say more," she said coldly, stepping back. I turned to look at her, only to see a chilling smile, devoid of warmth. "So, being first really does have its advantages," she muttered softly. At that moment, I noticed something strange above her head. Her label had changed. Yandere, possessiveness, revenge. A cold shiver ran down my spine, and I was filled with an intense unease. Jamie's declaration of war meant my peaceful life was about to come to an end. The good news? She wouldn't target my family. The bad news? She was ready to wage war against Vivian, and possibly every girl around me. After returning to school, I didn't go back to class. Instead, I slipped out through the gates. Sure enough, I spotted Vivian's car parked nearby. As soon as I got in, I could sense her joy. At least when it came to picking me up and dropping me off, Vivian seemed genuinely happy. "Jeff, what's wrong? You don't look well," Vivian asked, leaning in closer, clearly sensing something was off with me. "I'm fine, really," I said, but the more I explained, the stranger I sounded. "Did something happen? Are you avoiding me?" Vivian's brow furrowed slightly as she stared at me intently. "Seriously, it's nothing. I just need to head to my room." I hurriedly got out, desperate to retreat and gather my thoughts. I needed time to figure out how to handle the chaos that was surely coming. "You're avoiding me, aren't you? You must be avoiding me," Vivian's true personality began to surface as she suddenly tightened her grip on my wrist. "I'm not avoiding you, Vivian. Just let go of me." I tried to explain, but the more I spoke, the more tangled my words became. I just wanted to get back to my room as quickly as possible. At that moment, the doorbell rang. "Jeff, wait here. I'll go check," Vivian said, deciding to see who was at the door. Before she left, she turned back with a warning. "Don't even think about sneaking off to your room." "I won't, Vivian. Go ahead. I'll wait right here." I sighed, knowing that even if I did go back to my room, it wouldn't help. Vivian had a spare key, so I resigned myself to waiting in the living room. When she returned, however, her face had darkened considerably, and she was leading two very familiar figures into the house. "Jeff, good afternoon," said Kyle and Gino, much to my surprise. I never expected them to show up at my house. Vivian's expression grew even more stormy at the sight of the two girls. "Jeff, aren't you going to introduce your classmates? They say they're here to see you." Vivian's voice